So the topic of the lunch at the Economic Club was the future of Chicago through 2040. And you opened up with some remarks, just sort of your general overview on the economy and what do you think is going to be driving it in the future. I was wondering if maybe you could share a little bit about that.
Sure. I mean, my fundamental approach was that it was positive and that we were really on the cusp of a major expansion, economic expansion, and that it was going to be driven by a number of things, some the old-fashioned way by housing and consumers, and then the other old-fashioned way being out of left field, meaning that new entrepreneurial breakthroughs, new products, new services would be coming along, and that those would largely be driven by Gen Y, and Gen X and Gen Y, which were sort of two groups that had been not paid attention to thoroughly. My group, the Boomers, has owned the headlines and the stories for 30 years, but in 2010, Gen Y surpassed the Boomers as the largest cohort in the United States. And I set a foundation for why I thought economic recovery and expansion was really going to kick in and stay kicked in for a long time. And it had to do with the fact that corporations are sitting on $1 trillion of cash, pure cash. We don't know how much the financial institutions are, but somewhere between $1 and $2 trillion. They just haven't been moving on anything. And then the consumers themselves have gone through a radical change in the past 3 years in which they've started to save an enormous amount of money and pay down their debt. So there may be $1 trillion of swing there. So there's pent-up demand and all this kind of stuff. Now, if you look at Gen Y, they are a huge cohort. That Gen Y I mean by sort of 1978 to 1995, 17 to 30.
I missed it by a year.
Okay. So anyway, we can make it be honorary or whatever. Or you can be in either camp. You're on the cusp.
I'm on the cusp.
Right, exactly. So, so that one of the things of the shrunken housing values that everyone has mourned, it depends on your point of view. If you're Gen Y, then that's good because the affordability of housing has dramatically increased in these past few years.
Mm-hmm. Do you see more Gen Ys going out and making purchases?
I do, because that there's an extraordinary, Gen Y is extraordinarily slow maturing, both in terms of getting married, having kids. 30% right now actually have own housing, but an extraordinary percentage are still living at home or in campus. Mm-hmm. So that they constitute a marketplace, and they'll be hitting 22 years old at sort of 4.5 million a year for the next 7 or 8 years. So there's a sweet spot mm-hmm. for real estate, and so I think the market is there for that. And I also think there's just generally pent-up demand. So one of the core points I think I made at that Economic Club lunch was that we've been on this downer in the United States really since September 11th, and it's really is hysterical fear, and it's ridiculous. Really, that the premise even of the fear is crazy. But for the past 3 years, I think there's been reason to be afraid because the sucker almost went off the hill. Mm-hmm. And again, that's one thing that takes me to Gen Y, because that they are. I think really the most successful American generation of all time, the most American generation. But the other thing that's really important that I learned in sort of a decade or more of economic development is one of the key drivers of the sweetest spot in the workforce space is collaboration, the ability to work with other people. And I think that's really the key of Gen Y. That's how they've been learned. That's how they've been taught to operate, is in a collaborative environment. And then if you add to that, they're the most educated generation ever. And they're the most technologically enabled generation ever. So you combine their capability of looking for answers across the broadest possible base. So you move from a hierarchical environment of knowledge trickling down, I know this is sort of your mantra, to one in which everyone participates to find the real answer.
No
wherever.
one is as smart as all of us. I believe is a
Yeah,
quote
yeah,
you,
that's right, right. So
threw
it's an
out
old
there.
Japanese expression, which is like, none of us is as smart as all of us, and that they operate that way. So what you have here is this unprecedented tapping of human brain power.